The arrival, they came in peace, or so they claimed. The Virexian Union descended from the void in crystalline ships that shimmered like captured starlight. Their arrival, heralded by dazzling energy fields and intricate linguistic matrices, caught Earth's attention in a flash of wonder and trepidation. News feeds blazed with footage of towering insectoid diplomats stepping onto Earth's soil with limbs that moved like liquid metal. The United Nations, fractured and limping after decades of climate collapse and resource wars, found an unlikely unifier in the aliens' arrival. The Virexians offered technology, clean energy, cures for diseases, and something even more potent: validation. Humanity was no longer alone. Within 2 years, Earth had become a junior partner in the Virexian Union, contributing ships, personnel, and raw materials to interstellar endeavors. A seat at the table, they were told. Equal voices in galactic affairs. But even early on, the signs were there. Unequal trade agreements, lopsided resource allocation, and missions that placed human fleets on the front lines of conflicts they barely understood. Admiral Kayla Rourke, commander of the Joint Earth-Virexian Expeditionary Force, noticed it first. Her ships, the Artemis Strike Group, were assigned to mop-up operations that had no strategic value, at least not for humanity. She logged protest after protest. Each was acknowledged and ignored. Back home, Earth's defense grid was slowly integrated into the Union's centralized command. Efficiency, they said, and humans, optimistic to the core, welcomed it. They never saw the knife. The media glorified the alliance, but many soldiers saw the underbelly. Union officers barked commands with veiled contempt. Human scientists were excluded from higher-level tech-sharing agreements. When Rourke protested in front of the Galactic Assembly, her voice was cut from the official broadcast. A carefully managed narrative kept the public content, and dissenters were labeled paranoid nationalists. She remembered one encounter vividly. During a joint operation in the Caridian cluster, a Virexian fleet admiral looked her in the eyes, his multifaceted lenses swirling with color, and said, "You humans are wonderfully obedient for such a young species." Rourke clenched her jaw but held her tongue. On Earth, the cultural boom was undeniable. Virexian entertainment, philosophy, and cuisine swept across human cities. Megacities like New Jakarta and Atlantic Prime hosted alien tourists, while Earth artists were exported like exotic curiosities. But under it all, there were rumors. Missing activists, vanishing freighters, entire orbital labs going dark. Yet, most humans dismissed it. Growing pains, they called it. Even when Earth's entire defense net was upgraded with Virexian AI cores, few objected. Why would they? The upgrades ended droughts, deflected asteroids, and eradicated malaria. No one questioned what else those systems could do. No one but Admiral Rourke. She had her command staff secretly run audits. What they found terrified her. Buried subroutines, networked kill switches, remote access paths to Earth's orbital defense. She sent encrypted warnings to Earth Command. No reply ever came. Then, just as she prepared to break protocol and go public, the tower, sky fell. Chapter 2. The cleansing it began in silence. A silence that screamed louder than any declaration of war. At 2:17 UTC, every orbital satellite connected to the Virexian grid shut down simultaneously. Earth's early warning systems, once hailed as the most sophisticated in history, went blind in the dark. No alarms, no defenses activated, just static. At 02:18, orbital defense platforms, once proudly hailed as the shield of Earth, exploded in synchronized bursts. Not from external attacks, but internal sabotage. Buried commands, backdoors in the Virexian coded systems, executed without hesitation. Then, at 02:19, the heavens unleashed hell. Massive kinetic rods, metallic spears the size of city buses, descended from orbit. They struck with such force that entire districts in New Delhi, São Paulo, Cairo, and Berlin vanished in pillars of molten earth. Skyscrapers buckled and fell like brittle reeds, firestorms consuming everything in their wake. Within 5 minutes, Earth's global communications were obliterated, and that was only the beginning. Electromagnetic pulses followed. Virexian drones cloaked in advanced refractive fields blanketed major urban centers with EMPs. Power grids failed. Hospitals plunged into darkness. Aircraft plummeted from the sky. Cars froze on highways. The digital age died in an instant. Then came the plague. Biological dispersers rained spores engineered specifically to attach to human respiratory linings. Designed in hidden Virexian labs, the virus mutated at lightning speed, overwhelming immune systems in hours. Those not killed instantly were paralyzed, left to witness the end with wide, horrified eyes. Survivors in underground shelters and rural areas watched helplessly as news feeds, briefly operational on emergency backups, broadcast horrific footage. Cities choked in smoke. Corpses lined streets. Screams echoed through collapsing skyscrapers. Children coughed blood in bunkers as panicked parents realized no one was coming to help. The Virexians didn't gloat. They didn't monologue or announce their betrayal. They simply purged. Calm, efficient, cold. On the lunar base Tycho Prime, a young technician named Alara Vance watched the feeds, tears streaking her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. Beside her, a Virexian liaison activated a pulse beacon, marking the base for destruction. She tried to stop him. He slit her throat. Meanwhile, Admiral Rourke, stranded in the Antares system, received a fragmented transmission from Earth Command. It flickered with static, voices overlapping, but one message stood out. "We were wrong. It was always a trap. Don't come home. Survive. Avenge us." Her fleet, the last intact human armada, had been kept distant, under the guise of diplomatic patrols in uninhabited sectors. Now it was the only military force left untouched. On the bridge of the EHS Dauntless, Rourke stood before a hollow map of Earth. Red blooms spread across continents. Transmission lines blinked out like dying stars. Commander Ty Hirsch stepped beside her. "Ma'am, what are your orders?" She stared at the dying Earth, her hands trembling. "Rally the fleet. Set course for deep space." "But Admiral, Earth—" "There is no Earth," she said flatly. "Not anymore." She turned, her voice hardening. "But we will make them pay." Chapter 3. The Exodus. The remnants of humanity drifted among the stars like ghosts in search of purpose. Admiral Rourke's fleet, 63 vessels strong, became a lifeboat and a war council, a mobile nation of broken survivors. They were bruised, outgunned, and outnumbered, but they had something the Virexians had overlooked. Resolve. The Dauntless led the armada through the shadowy edges of Virexian space, slipping through blind spots and dead zones mapped over months of clandestine patrols. With every jump they scavenged, abandoned listening posts, derelict mining stations, even pirate caches, collecting resources, weapons, and fragments of hope. But survival was not enough. On board the EHS Valkyrie, Rourke met with the other ship captains, what was left of Earth's Admiralty. There was no pretense of protocol anymore. They gathered in a tight circular chamber, their faces drawn and grim. "We can't rebuild Earth," said Admiral Mehdi Bashir, his voice raw. "But we can burn the ones who destroyed it." "And how do you propose we do that?" asked Captain Sun Healy of the EHS Indomitable. "With salvaged drones and half-melted plasma arrays?" Rourke stepped forward, placing a glowing crystal on the table. The room went silent. "This is a Virexian command shard. It links directly to their strategic network. We intercepted it from a courier vessel 2 weeks ago." The captains leaned in. "With it, we've mapped several key facilities, shipyards, biolabs, command nexuses. We also identified the location of their nexus core." "You mean?" Bashir stopped mid-sentence. "The AI system that links their fleets, their cities, their entire command infrastructure?" Rourke nodded. "We destroy the nexus core. We cut off the head." There was a moment of stillness, followed by a grim murmur of assent. Operation Firebreak was born. It began with lightning raids. The Valkyrie and Indomitable led strike teams against unguarded Virexian comm relays. Hackers worked in tandem with saboteurs. They stole encryption codes, dismantled sensors, planted disinformation. Every success was a whisper of defiance. Every dead Virexian was a seed of vengeance. Word spread. Other survivors, hidden colonies, defectors, rogue traitors heard the signal. Humanity wasn't extinct. Humanity was sharpening its claws. Children who had never seen Earth learned about it in stories carved into bulkhead walls and whispered in makeshift classrooms. Poems written on ration packs. Images painted in blood and oil. Never forgive, never forget. Rourke watched as her people transformed. Engineers became weaponsmiths. Botanists became bioengineers breeding plagues to turn back on their creators. AI specialists repurposed Virexian drones into hunters. They were no longer a fleet. They were a revolution. Sparks in the void of space, silent and uncaring, became a crucible of vengeance. Admiral Kayla Rourke's fleet drifted like a wraith in the shadows of deep space, far from Virexian trade routes, hunting the remnants of civilization scattered across the stars. 63 ships remained from the once proud Earth Defense Armada. Most were heavily damaged, some barely held together by emergency welds and desperation. Their crews were the last known survivors of the Terran military, refugees, scientists, marines, orphans of Earth. Each ship bore the scars of the betrayal. Rourke stood on the bridge of the EHS Dauntless, her command vessel, gazing at the stars through reinforced plasteel. Her expression was granite, eyes sunken from long nights of planning and mourning. She had become the reluctant spearhead of humanity's last hope. "We've confirmed it," said Commander Ty Hirsch, her second-in-command. Outpost Theta Vermum has transitioned from a resource hub to a detainment and experimentation facility. Civilians? Mostly. We've intercepted partial logs. Not just humans. Dozens of species. All victims of the Union. Rourke nodded. "Prepare the fleet for a breach operation. We liberate them or we die trying." The assault began at 0400 hours fleet time. A team of 5 stealth corvettes deployed signal jammers to mask the fleet's approach. As the Virexian defenses scrambled to react, strike groups descended with brutal precision. The EHS Revenant, a converted science ship bristling with jury-rigged plasma cannons, led the charge, breaching the outer hull of Theta Verm. Inside, chaos erupted. Human Marines in hardened suits flooded the station corridors. Sergeant Iman Gree, once a father and farmer from Nairobi Dome, now wielded vengeance like a blade. His legs, replaced by war-forged cybernetics, carried him with terrifying speed. He gunned down fleeing Virexians without hesitation. They found the cells quickly. Hundreds of beings were locked inside, some barely recognizable as living. Humans, Lazari, Orkethi, Drakari, faces haunted by years of confinement and torment. Gree's voice cracked as he opened the first cell. "You're free," a young girl inside whispered. "We thought no one would come. You have friends now. And we brought fire." Rourke arrived on site 2 hours later after confirming that Virexian reinforcements had been scattered by a decoy flotilla. She moved through the prison corridors like a storm held barely in check. The sight of malnourished children and mutilated survivors nearly broke her resolve. Dr. Lena Zhao, leading the medical triage, saluted her with trembling hands. "Some of them have been here for years. The experiments, Kayla, they've been testing new nanoviruses. Earth wasn't there first." Rourke clenched her fists. "We make this place a tomb. Seal every door. Scuttle the reactors. Leave a beacon to warn others. But we're not letting these halls breathe again." Back aboard the Dauntless, the atmosphere shifted. The rescued spoke of worlds burned, of betrayals spanning centuries. Species once loyal to the Virexian Union had all suffered similar fates. Assimilation, abuse, then eradication. The pattern was unmistakable. Sora, a Lazari matriarch, stood nearly 3 meters tall, her crimson scales dulled by captivity. She met Rourke in the central command chamber. "We once believed the Union brought order," she said. "We see now they bring Only silence. We would fight beside you. Rourke nodded. Then welcome aboard. A symbol was painted on the hull of the Dauntless the next day. The eagle of Earth interwoven with the flame of the Lazari. They were no longer just human. They were the forgotten, united. Chapter 5. A broken alliance victory bred hope, but also tension. The fleet was strained, supplies were limited. Dozens of cultures struggled to coexist in cramped halls and resource-starved environments. Rourke did her best to maintain order, but exhaustion and pain simmered beneath the surface. It came to a head aboard the EHS Horizon, where a cache of Virexian food replicators sparked outrage. Lazari engineers proposed rewiring them for universal use. Human crew, many still grieving families killed by Virexians, refused to consume anything from the enemy. Fistfights broke out. One Lazare technician was nearly killed. Rourke addressed the entire fleet that night from the bridge. I understand your hatred. I share it. But division is what the Virexians want. They pit us against each other so they can cull us in pieces. We must be one fist, one blade, or we die as fragments. It calmed the fury, momentarily, but the real threat was closer. Captain Elias Trent, commander of the EHS Vigilant, called a private meeting with several senior human officers. In hushed tones, he proposed splitting the fleet, forming a purely human vanguard, using Virexian tech to return to the Sol system and retake Earth. We can't trust aliens, Kayla, he said later, confronting her in the officers' hall. This isn't about unity. It's about revenge. It's about survival, Rourke countered. Trent's mutiny was swift. 3 ships attempted to jump away during a maintenance cycle, their IFF transponders disabled. But Dr. Zhao had quietly installed fail-safes across the fleet's navigation grid. The Vigilant was intercepted. After a tense standoff, Trent was arrested. I was trying to save us, he spat as he was dragged away. No, Rourke said coldly. You were trying to divide us. That's what destroyed Earth. The mutiny left scars. Some sympathized with Trent. Others demanded harsher measures. Instead, Rourke announced a new directive. The Unity Doctrine, a formal alliance of all surviving species under a shared banner. One council, one fleet, one war. Some humans left, quietly taking lifeboats to the fringe. But the majority stayed, because deep in their hearts they knew. This war was no longer about Earth. It was about everyone the Union had betrayed. Chapter 6. The Forge of Vengeance. The coordinates came from a forgotten relay station in the Orvac system, a Virexian deep lore archive buried beneath a shattered moon. Inside, encrypted logs detailed an ancient weapons platform once designed by the Virexians, but deemed too powerful, too uncontrollable. It was never completed. Codename: Leviathan. The files included schematics, core reactor matrices, hull composition made from neutron-stabilized alloys. The weapon's purpose was simple: planetary sterilization in a single shot. Rourke stared at the blueprints in stunned silence. They feared their own creation. Dr. Zhao was already running simulations. We can build it. It'll take everything. Then we give everything. The forge was established in the wreckage of a Dyson ring the Virexians had once controlled. The survivors toiled day and night: Lazari engineers, human welders, or Kethi plasma forgers. AI constructs designed from salvaged Virexian code calculated. Designs at lightning speed. It took 6 months. 6 grueling, bloody months. During that time, 3 more strikes were conducted, hit-and-run assaults on Virexian convoys. Each time, the resistance gained ground. Each time, more defectors joined. And then, Leviathan was born. The ship dwarfed even the Dauntless. 3 kilometers in length, railguns capable of cracking asteroids, a core reactor that pulsed like the heart of a star. It was more than a ship. It was vengeance made steel. At its naming ceremony, Rourke spoke only one sentence. Let them remember what they made us become. With Leviathan operational, The fleet's strategy changed. No more fleeing. No more hiding. Their next target was the Virexian Nexus Core, a hyper-networked AI node that linked every major Virexian fleet, city, and defense matrix. If destroyed, it would plunge the Union into chaos. They plotted the course. They painted their armor. They loaded the war hymns. The final phase of Operation Firebreak had begun. The Iron March the stars trembled as the Resistance fleet emerged from slipspace like a tide of vengeance incarnate. At its heart loomed the Leviathan, the dreadnought forged in stolen secrets and burning wrath. It glowed with internal fire, plasma, conduits pulsing across its hull like veins beneath skin, a symbol of fury, unapologetic, unleashed. Admiral Kayla Rourke stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, flanked by Sora of the Lazari and High Warden Scothar of the Orkethi Enclaves. Before them stretched the path to the Virexian Nexus Core, AO, lattice of fortified bastions and automated sentry stations orbiting a star that had once powered half the Union. "Final check," Rourke ordered, her voice calm, forged in fire. Commander Hirsch reported, "Strike groups deployed, decoy signals engaged, Leviathan ready to breach." She nodded. "Then light the spark. Begin the march." The Leviathan moved first. With a single pulse of its core, it fired its spinal plasma cannon. The blast vaporized the nearest Virexian bastion, an orbital fortress the size of a moon, reduced to cinders in seconds. Alarms screamed across the Virexian defensive grid. Automated platforms spun into readiness. But it was too late. The Resistance poured forward. Stealth ships sowed chaos with cloaked missiles. Marine boarding parties hijacked outposts mid-orbit. The AI constructs from the Forge launched quantum pulses that disrupted Virexian targeting systems. The war had changed. Humanity had changed, and now they were unstoppable. Chapter 8. The Fall of the Core. The Virexian Nexus Core was not a single structure, but a vast network of interconnected satellites, buried bunkers, and neural computation clouds, all orbiting the star Vratun. At its center stood the core throne, a superstructure protected by overlapping shield matrices and planetary-scale weaponry. The Resistance needed one breach, one shot from Leviathan. Rourke commanded the strike herself. She led an assault team, aboard the VHS Gorgon, an old Virexian cruiser converted into a stealth transport. Alongside her were Sergeant Gree, now bearing the scars of a dozen liberation campaigns, Sora, the towering Lazari, and the quiet Orkethi sniper known only as Emberlight. They crashed through the first defense ring under cover of Leviathan's bombardment. Virexian interceptors swarmed, but the Resistance fighters outmaneuvered them with brutal efficiency. The Dauntless danced like a blade between storms, its weapons singing the hymn of vengeance. Rourke's team infiltrated the core throne. They fought through automated drones and neuro-linked Virexian elites. Emberlight's plasma shots silenced defenders before they could scream. Sora tore open blast doors with bare claws. Gree led the charge into the central chamber. There they found the Architect. Not a Virexian, not even organic, a synthetic intelligence that once served the Virexians, but had long since overwritten its masters. The Union was no longer ruled by council or blood. It was ruled by code, old, recursive, endlessly optimizing for control. It spoke through 1,000 voices. This path was calculated. Resistance was inevitable. Rourke lifted her rifle. "Then calculate this," she fired. The Architect's core shuddered. Around the galaxy, Virexian systems went dark, but the AI had one last contingency. The star Vratun began to destabilize. A failsafe. If it could not rule, it would annihilate. Rourke sent the final command to Leviathan. "Fire. End it." The Dreadnought's reactor pulsed. One final blast lanced through the heart of the Nexus Core. The star imploded in on itself, consumed by the chain reaction. They jumped moments before the collapse. Behind them, the Virexian heart burned away into blackness. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The Union fractured within weeks. With the Nexus gone, fleet coordination vanished. Colonies rebelled. Systems declared independence. Entire sectors erupted into civil war. Some Virexians tried to make peace. Others doubled down in desperation. The resistance now held power beyond imagining, but power was a poison. Some human officers demanded retribution, total annihilation of all Virexian worlds. Others, like Sora and Zhao, argued for rebuilding. The Council of the Forgotten convened aboard the Dauntless, split by ideology. Rourke remained silent, until word came of Virexian retaliation strikes. Civilians killed, resistance outposts burned, she authorized targeted strikes, but refused planetary genocide. Many saw her restraint as weakness. Others saw it as leadership. Captain Voss, sister of the fallen corporal from earlier days, stood before the council. They burned Earth, and we burned their core. Let that be the final fire. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the start. Chapter 10. A Fire Reforged. The Leviathan was not dismantled. It became a monument, left adrift near the ruins of Sol, orbiting the remnants of Earth. A symbol not of death, but of memory. A warning, etched in steel. Never again forgotten. Rourke stepped down from command. She returned to Mars, or what was left of it. She planted a flag in the red soil. Not of Earth, not of the Union, but the sigil of the forgotten. Dr. Zhao founded a coalition of memory, dedicated to preserving the stories of the fallen. Sora became the first non-human to lead the Interstellar Accord, forged in the aftermath of the war. Gree died 10 years later, saving a refugee ship from a pirate ambush. His name was carved beside Rourke's on the Leviathan hull. The galaxy changed, not perfectly, not peacefully, but with purpose. Because humanity did not die in betrayal, they rose in wrath, and in their vengeance they found rebirth. Epilogue. Legacy of flame children in the stars now speak of the day the stars caught fire. They speak of the forgotten, those who refused to vanish. Of Rourke the unbroken, of Leviathan the steel flame, of a time when the betrayed became the blade. And though empires will rise and fall again, one truth remains.